In 2024, we just crossed 11.5 million.
That's Karlton Dennis, and he's making 8 figures from the simple sales funnel that you see on the screen. But what's crazy is there's a few mistakes he's making inside of this sales funnel that's probably losing him a few $1,000,000 in extra profit every single year. So let's dive into why it is working. I mean, it's making 8 figures, but also how he can fix these few mistakes to make it work a whole lot better. These are just conversion killers, just horrible. I just can't believe it. I'm roasting this one a little bit more than common. This funnel is making 8 figures and there's this many errors in it. And we can't really start talking about Karlton's strategy without saying he is the most popular accountant in the US. 1 million on YouTube, 600 something thousand on Instagram, more on these other platforms. So he's probably around 2 million followers. What's interesting is he's taken this boring thing, tax and saving money on taxes, and he's turned it into basically a lifestyle brand, right? Like we'll roll some clips. He's got some Lamborghinis and, all of these things in a nice house, which is kind of like this social proof to the fact of like, hey, when you save money on taxes, guess what? You can live better, live more like you want to, which is part of why I think his brand is working so well. So that's the top of the funnel, right? Like he has a massive net. If he does just decent on the funnel, enough of it trickles down to where he's making 8 figures. Okay. So if we go to his Instagram, we'll start to see what he's doing to generate eyeballs. So obviously, again, this content's like the life you desire, right? It's him on yachts with crazy watches and his nice house and all that stuff. And he has other content, right, about most overlooked tax deductions and things like that. That's educational. And I think his goal there is to create a seed of doubt, right? Like he has this question he often asks in ads and in his funnel. That's, is your CPA working for you or the IRS, right? And if the average person hasn't heard that, like, what do you mean working for the IRS, right? And it gets you to kind of now start doubting if your accountant is actually doing all they can to save you money. It's a very smart strategy. So he's posting this type of predominantly short form content on Instagram, long form on YouTube with, I think the same shorts as well. So when we look at where he's sending people from Instagram, it goes to this consultation page. I think he occasionally does like a challenge once a quarter, maybe the occasional webinar and things like that he'll push that traffic to as well. And I think this is hilarious because it's like so simple. Now, I'm not against doing simple funnels like this, but he sends you straight to the application and look at the headline. Please read before completing your application. Right, in big bold letters, which is fine. But then it says, for high income earners making a minimum of 300K net income, great, right? You want to DQ people who aren't qualified. I just think if you added that to the headline, right? Like maybe it said, attention, high income earners making a minimum of 300K net income. We can save you, I think some of the numbers I use elsewhere is like 30 to 90% on your tax bill. Fill out the application to learn more, right? Something like that. You're speaking to the benefit while still DQing. And the best way to measure it would be how many applications do you get, right? Does the application rate go up or down? But if you measured it also on bounce rate, do people stick longer based on that headline, right? Which then again, only matters if it results in more applications, which results in more calls, which results in more sales. Okay, let's look at this application because there's so many things on here that he's doing that I think are just probably hurting conversions a lot. Okay, first off, when you land, it's 3 things. Typically, I would be curious to break this up into steps, right? If it was like full name, phone number, email on 3 different steps rather than all in one. But let's just do this really quick. Also, phone number is one of those, I know I've mentioned this in a lot of videos. It's one of those interesting things that like, if you're using, great, right? If you can say, last month, we got 10x your deals because our setters called people who submitted the survey but didn't book, keep doing it. But most people I talk to, they're not actually using it for anything and it's just hurting conversions. Okay, you submit that, it redirects you to a new page, to this next step of the survey, right? So that's now submitted. So they have that. And now you're on this next one. Okay. There's multiple things he's doing in this survey. And I know this is super nerdy, but I think you're going to appreciate this. So it says, what's your expected take home income this year? Let's say we'll put 500 to $1 million, expected net income. Look at this. When I'm here, say I'm making $1 million, right? I would say, okay, cool. I'm making 300K in profit. Great. Sweet. I type in 300K. You'll see why that's important in a second here. It asks for your employment status. Say I'm W-2. Asks for your occupation. Let's just say I'm a business owner. Watch, when I submit this, an error pops up. It says invalid monetary format. What does that mean? Well, I don't know. The first time I came to submit this application, I was very confused. And it took me a few minutes to realize I added in, right? If I'm just thinking net profit, just by default, I added in the $sign. But there's already a $sign here on this go high level form that's making to where it doesn't work. So I have to remove that and then go next. That is just a prime example of friction on the user. I'm 100% positive I'm not the only one to do that. I'm sure there are people who probably don't ever end up figuring it out. If you watch like clarity recordings, I'm sure you would see people getting stuck there. Next, are you a US citizen? Yes or no? That one's pretty easy. How much did you pay in taxes last year? Available liquid capital. That one's not super, below or, above. That's cool. Married. Okay, this one is also really bad. Number of kids, 2 years to 18 years old. Why is this bad? It says put NA if not applicable. If I put NA, it doesn't even work. It literally does not work. I have to put a number. So what I have to do is put 0, but it doesn't say that. Again, these are just conversion killers in this form. I guarantee if you optimize this form, you could get at least 30% more applications without a shadow of doubt in my mind. And then same thing in all of these. I'm not going to go over it again, but again, that $sign. I remember when I first submitted this, I did it again, even though I already knew it was a problem. Just by default, you do it again. We'll just enter in some information here, right? Available cash. These are all just kind of qualification questions. I would probably assume they can strip this down. Not that they necessarily need to, but you could strip it down and, maybe qualify based on a few less questions. Asks, how do you currently file? What would you like to accomplish? And then you submit it. Okay. On this next page, again, this is the primary funnel that they're sending traffic to. On the next page, watch this. Ready to take control of your financial future? I mean, I don't know. It's just like, if you're at this point, is taking control of your financial future really the promise that you're looking for? Maybe. I don't know. I just think it's more about like, I'm trying to save 30 to 90% of my taxes, right? These different numbers they use elsewhere, which I guess, is taking control of your financial future, but it doesn't feel like the main promise. If you try and this thing's kind of broken because it just popped up when I wasn't exiting. If you try and exit, or if it thinks you're trying to exit, it says, wait, please confirm that you're passing on your transfer one-on-one session with our team, valued at $2,000 to map out your tax strategy plan absolutely free. Right? And I'm happy with paying the IRS, or I want to maximize my tax savings. If you click that, it takes you there. If you click that, it takes you to your webinar. Okay. And if you hit that, it opens up the calendar. That's pretty cool. I like that it opens up the calendar. But let's close it out. Those often, like I hate exit intent pop-ups because they almost never work. They have this weird like embed PDF on here. I think you should just spell this all out on the page, like ready to, see if we can help you save 30 to 90% on your tax bill. Here's some information that you need to know before booking your call, right? And then it just shows that. This just feels a little bit weird. Now watch this. This is a key conversion killer right here that they were also doing. When I first came here, again, I scroll down, I see book your call. Like, great, book my call. I click that button. Nothing happened. This funnel is making 8 figures and there's this many errors in it. Why does nothing happen? Well, what does that button do? It opens up the calendar underneath, right? So if we reload this and we come right here, no calendar, it pops up the calendar. But the problem is you don't see it, right? If you're right there, you don't see it. And if this was on mobile, it's even worse. If I come right here and I'm right there and I click that button, nothing happens. So yeah, sure, it can pop up the calendar. Honestly, I don't even know why it would pop up the calendar. People have to scroll anyways to see it. What it really should do is the calendar should just be there. And then when you click it, it should anchor you down to the calendar, right? But that's just horrible. I just can't believe it. Okay. I'm roasting this one a little bit more than common, but there's just like, these are just like no-brainer friction points that just need to be cut out, right? Like how many calls every single month are they losing by not having that button working the right way? A lot. Okay. Once you book the call, you go to this thank you page. And this thank you page, I actually think they're doing quite well. Then they have this video. Is your CPA working for the IRS? This is a great video. And I think this is something that is, again, the big needle movers that are, people are so motivated to book a call. They're figuring out how to book a call. Right? The button's not working. They don't care. They're going to figure it out. Right? Again, I still think they're losing a ton of revenue, but the user motivation because of his brand, I think is so high that people are going through, right? If you watched our video on the conversion heuristic that Mech Labs created, one of the formula there is C equals 4M plus 3V minus 2I minus F plus, or minus 2A, I think. The 4M in the beginning shows that the number one thing that matters in generating conversions is user motivation, right? Like if you are motivated to buy or to book a call, you can have friction, not have incentive, have anxiety, right? All the other aspects of the equation that are negative, but the motivation outweighs it, right? But again, there's probably some people who aren't as motivated that if you remove those, or that are, right, that are they just can't figure it out. But I think on this page, they're doing pretty good. They have a lot of testimonials. All in all, I think it's pretty good. Okay. That's the thank you page. And that's kind of where you get sent to from Instagram. So they're generating a ton of traffic and probably a lot of applications. But I think if they clean those things up, I bet they get 30% more calls pretty simply. So you're welcome, Carlton. If you're watching this, hopefully I just made you a few extra million a year. That's kind of the main funnel. YouTube goes there as well. They also have this STR ebook, which is like a lead magnet, tripwire, like $7 book that I'm sure then goes to book a call right after. They could probably do a lot on this to improve conversions. Sabri Subi's book funnel, which we've done a video on, I think is probably one of the better optimized book funnels. They could probably model something like that and improve conversions. But it's, it's pretty basic. It says get your ebook now, you submit this. Phone number on these form fields is a conversion killer. Unless you're dialing leads, it's a conversion killer. We did a test recently for a client. I think it was a 30% improvement, 32% improvement by removing phone number on a 2-step order form like this on Go High Level. I would just remove it. This is good though. They don't ask for like shipping address or anything like that, which they don't need because it's ebook, but you'd be surprised how many people ask kind of pointless questions. I'd assume that goes to upsells and, some other consultations. That's one thing that we've tested that works so well. I call it the ascension funnel, which is right after you buy something like this, you go to a survey, right? That says, hey, see if you qualify for this other thing. And we've seen like 98% of buyers submitting that survey, and then a good chunk of the qualified people from the survey booking the call. And this is taken, like, just to give you some concrete numbers to this, if you take earnings per visitor, which is like how much revenue divided by how many people come to the website, if you take that on one of our clients' funnels, they're at $1.50. Okay, so for every person that comes to the website, they make an average of $1.50 on just the front end, right? So in this case, it'd be like just on the book, right? They don't sell a book, but say they do. Once you add in the survey and you ascend people into a higher ticket offer on the back end, we've gotten that to $4 or $5, right? So effectively like 3 to 4xing the amount of money the funnel's making by just adding a survey post-purchase. One thing I forgot to mention as well on the consultation, this is just an interesting thing that I've noticed. We track, I just mentioned it, earnings per visitor for all of our clients, right? So total amount of money you make divided by the total amount of people that come to your website. And I think the reason that's important is often as business owners, we do so much work, we spend so much money to get people to come to our website, right? We make content, we run ads. So I think the number one metric we can optimize for is how much do we make on average for every person that comes. The reason I bring that up is he goes straight to consultation. I'm not opposed to that because we have noticed, not always, it depends on where your kind of prospects are in relation to like the buying pyramid of like, the top being most aware and the bottom being completely unaware. If it's organic, they're pretty aware typically. And we've noticed that when they are very aware, again, going back to friction, basically the shorter the funnel is, typically the higher the EPV. To give you an example of that, how would this be less direct? Well, we'll get to his ad funnel to kind of paint this picture to show you this, because his ad funnel, where they're sending ad traffic to, is a little bit less direct. And that makes sense because it's, going from ads, so it's not as warm of traffic, right? So organic, direct, ads, a little bit less direct, right? So when you land here, it says the only difference between paying a fortune or saving a fortune in taxes is tax strategy. They're not leading with book a call. They're leading with education. So for people who are simply problem aware, I have a large tax bill, this is going to speak to. For people on Karlton's Instagram, they're probably already solution aware because they follow him on Instagram and they've seen all of his educational content on there, right? So I just think he's doing a good job there of matching the directness with where the user is. This VSL also is very, very good. He talks about why you need an enrolled agent, not a CPA, and some of the different tax strategy you can do. One thing he could do here that I think would massively improve conversions. This is a self-hosted video on High Level. Vidalytics, I've been super impressed with recently. We tested them. We just concluded the test today for a client, and it quite literally increased applications on their funnel by 66% at a 100% statistical significance. So if I was Karlton, I'd be testing that here to see if that'll improve conversions, right? I think the copy probably could be a little bit better here. I think it could be more cohesive with the ads. So if we go to the ads, you'll see what I mean. It's a little bit kind of lacking in cohesiveness. It says, thanks to our RRAD method, you'll see how our clients typically get their tax bills reduced by 50 to 80% in 9 days or less. This is probably just a communication issue between the media buyer and the person working on the funnel. But there's really 3 things that are super, super good inside of this copy that they're not using on the VSL page. Number 1 is the direct promise, right? 50 to 80% reduced tax bill. That should be right here, right? Make people know that when they land on the page, they're in the right spot. The second thing is they add a time aspect to that in 90 days, right? That's also not here. The third thing they do is have a unique mechanism, the RRAD method. This should say how to cut your tax bill by 50 to 90% in the next 90 days by using the RRAD method. I would bet you do that, you're going to get people to stick more, watch the video, add Vidalytics to that, people are going to stay longer, and you're going to get more applications. Again, I think this funnel is good. It's going to the right spot. It's not super direct. I would cut 100%. I'd cut all of this stuff down here. Maybe I'd add some testimonials, but all the other stuff, cut it. It's hurting conversions. So this then goes start your application. When you go here, again, same exact issues on this. And now they're spending money on ads. This matters even more because, you need to get a good return on ad spend. So you can see there how he's kind of going direct on organic, indirect on paid ads, which I think makes a lot of sense. He also has a webinar funnel that he sends people to from YouTube and paid ads as well. These are the few ways he's generating calls. He has the book, he has the VSL, he has a webinar. What does it all go to? Well, once you get on the call, they have kind of a range of services that range from 12,000 to 55,000. And kind of the two main tiers are the 12K and the 32K. And the 12K is a done with you option, right? Which basically is like, hey, we'll give you the plan. We'll look over, all of your situation and we'll come up with a perfect plan for you, right? To save you however much you need to save on taxes, right? Here's what you should do. But they don't actually do it for you. The $32,000 plan is we give you the plan and then we execute it for you, right? I think they file your taxes. I think they do, like if you're going to buy, a short-term rental, they'll do the cost segregation analysis, all that sort of stuff. But it's $32K. Okay, why do I bring all this up about price? Well, I think it allows them to scale so much faster by doing this. And I think there's a few reasons as to why that's the case. So if you think about accounting services, they're probably on average $1,000 to $4,000 or $5,000, right? For like personal and business returns for a basic accounting service. They're charging $32,000 to actually file your taxes or $12,000 just to tell you what to do, right? So way more expensive. Now, obviously, they're able to do that because their promise is we're going to save you more than you pay us. That's a pretty decent offer. That's number one. They're able to charge higher ticket prices, which is like marketing rule, number one, right? Dan Kennedy says the person who can spend the most to acquire the customer wins. Karlton Dennis is obviously winning because he's the most famous accountant in America for kind of a person that just started in an accounting tax strategy firm. He's probably one of the largest, right? Making the most amount of profit. Number two, though, is it's not just price, right? Because if they were $1,000, they could probably get more clients, right? There's a lot of people that can't afford them. But the amount of people that would pay $5,000 but would also pay $12,000 is probably pretty large, right, in their audience. I guess what I'm saying is the conversion rate on the sales calls probably doesn't drop that much by having these higher, like it doesn't drop in relation to how much more they're making, right? They might lose some sales, but they're making so much more, so it doesn't matter. So anyways, their prices are, solid. They're obviously doing really, really well with them. And I think that's a big reason why this thing is working so well, despite, right, the funnel not converting super well. So I think if they made these changes, I would not be surprised if they could add a few $1 million extra a year and just profit inside of their pocket because they're already getting the traffic. So this has been Karlton Dennis's funnel, why it's working, and also what he could do to improve it. If you enjoyed this video, YouTube thinks you'll enjoy this one as well, and I'll see you there.